Paul Mason, and the Brexit MEP Lucy Harris. Welcome all. I'm going to ask, you can answer that whoever thinks there is still the chance of a deal before the end of October gets to go first.
Well, I will, because you can never say never. I mean, who has made predictions about the last few years that have not been proved totally wrong
Rupert.
The next few weeks? So, never say never, I agree. It is looking pretty unlikely, but we've had some vaguely encouraging comments from Leo Varadkar this evening. Who knows? I
wonder whether you think that no deal for the Conservatives stuffs the Brexit party.
Well, as Nigel has said, if the Tories want to put no deal on the table, then he's willing to do a pact with them. So it's kind of what we wanted in the first place. So if they put a deal on the table, we're willing to stand down candidates in areas that they might see as a threat. And likewise in the north, if they stand down candidates in the north, we might come to some agreement.
So whether there's an agreement or not, the Conservatives meld and merge into the Brexit party.
Well, Boris Johnson's been pretty aggressive, saying he's not going to do a deal with the Brexit party.
Doesn't matter,
so that's quite hard to do. I think that the Conservative Party position will probably be, look, we're pretty similar to where the Conservative Party is now, which is we have to do no deal if necessary. But I think it would be a surprise if they got to a position where they were literally ruling out further discussions. I mean, they've put forward a proposal if after a general election there's a Conservative majority and the European Union say, OK, now we're willing to consider your proposals. I don't think Boris Johnson's going to be in a position where he's going to say, no, I'm not even going to talk.
Paul?
I mean, overnight, this briefing that went to The Spectator from possibly Dominic Cummings was surprising because it did commit the Conservatives to going into a snap election arguing for no deal. In addition, it committed them to pulling Security Corporation, presumably with Estonia, where we've got 800 troops stationed on the front line with Russia. I mean, it was so off the wall that, people like me in the Labour movement were thinking, hold my coat for the next election. When we go on the doorsteps in Labour Tory marginals, if the Conservatives want to be on those doorsteps saying we're going to crash the economy by 10% overnight, destroy credit conditions for 5 million small businesses, then, literally hold my coat. Because in the past, it's true that small businesses, self-employed people, natural Conservatives have been worried about our party and its economic competence. But if the Bank of England's saying, look, it's a catastrophe, no deal, and the Conservative Party are promising catastrophe, I think Jeremy Corbyn could win out that election outright.
What do you make of these splits that we're hearing about within Number 10? I mean, forget the country, forget the party, look behind the door of Number 10, and we're hearing of the splits between the Dom Cummings sort of war room and the Eddie Lister the sort of carrot rather than the stick approach to winning people over. Is there a real rift there that's going to come to a head?
In political commentary, we love splits, but I think this is more about a kind of different function. You've really got a campaign team that exists around Dominic Cummings, and they have known that they are facing the likelihood of a general election, which we may or may not get, depending on whether the Labour Party are up for it. And so that everything that comes out of that team is really about preparing for an election. It's about clarity of message. It's the message that Boris Johnson can take to the country. I don't think that means that there isn't simultaneously a serious attempt in Number 10 to get a deal. I think we have seen genuine innovation by the UK over the last couple of weeks. And the Prime Minister's critics say...
Do you think he thought that this would run?
Well, the critics say you've proposed something that is difficult for the European Union. They're not going to accept it. But what's the alternative? Theresa May literally brought the other deal 3 times the House of Commons and it failed miserably. So it would be total madness to try that again. Boris Johnson has actually been creative.
I mean, everyone's been talking about, the blame game, whether it's Verhofstadt saying that's what they're doing or whether Merkel's getting blamed for saying it's, do you think Boris Johnson will get blamed by the electorate or will he turn it to his advantage?
It's difficult to say. I mean, looking at some of the polls that came out today, about 64% of people aren't going to blame Boris Johnson but the European Union for this mess. However, I think the seats that he's going to need in areas up north, I think they're willing to blame Boris Johnson for this. I don't think there's going to be a situation where Boris Johnson is going to fully get blamed for it, but I think it's definitely a risk, a very high risk, and I'm surprised they're throwing around the blame game as such.
Let's remember, we haven't seen the legal document. I mean, the chances of the House of Commons voting on something that they have yet to see, given all the caveats that quite reasonable pro-soft Brexit people have, are zero. This deal is dead. Varadkar is, I think, going through the motions. And you had earlier on Melanie...
So he doesn't get blamed?
Well, they all have to. Well, they all have to try. I mean, the German government told me this time last year, our central projection is it's likely to be no deal. Everything less than no deal is an upside for them. They just don't believe Boris Johnson or Theresa May ever had the numbers to do Brexit in the British House of Parliament.
So let's look at any forthcoming general election, which could be really quick, right? Or could be quite soon if we do have an extension, and that's what Labour have now signed up to. So at this point, as you say, Boris Johnson and the Conservatives have to campaign on no deal, pretty much, which kind of wipes you out, leaves you in a difficult place.
Well.
And Labour then, when you think of them having matched your spending pledges, Labour's now what becomes the party of the moderates. So you've got Firebrand Corbyn, who's got to be the middle. It
would be very difficult for the Conservatives to match borrowing 250 billion over 10 years and taxing 50 billion. All redistribution has a cost. There is no magic money tree when it comes to who do you take the money from. So, but I think that I opposed the Corbyn line. I wanted Labour to commit to remain. But I have to say that as the Conservatives vacate the ground of soft Brexit and increasingly vacate the ground of hard Brexit in terms of no deal, it becomes really easy to say, put it back to the people.
Look,
it's a free word sentence.
I think we can tell who is in favour of an election and who isn't. So you've got the Conservative Party wanting election and the Labour Party clearly blocking an election, because they're 10 points behind the polls, because they've got a Brexit policy that they can't explain on the doorstep, and
put it to the people,
and a leader whose popularity is falling. So I think that you don't need to kind of guess who wants an election, who doesn't. They've revealed it in the way they've been voting.
I think we really must start giving the general public a say through a general election. I mean, that's the obvious thing to go for. I think
you wouldn't be scared of a confirmatory vote or a second referendum, though, would you?
It's not about being scared. It's about doing what's right. And I think having a confirmatory vote isn't really what we do in this country. We have a referendum every 40. We've had one every 40 years, and I'd be okay with a referendum in another 40 years. But what's right and what's just is deciding on a government when there's a completely dysfunctional Parliament, and we need a new government in there to be able to decide.
We clearly need a general election. This country needs a general election, right?
Do you think
we have got a Parliament that is not working.
Is the Labour worried about a general election?
I really don't.
Honestly.
I spent the entire week at the conference. I sensed the kind of hold me back.
What's happening in Labour HQ then? Because
they should tell their MPs because they're voting against one.
Well, look,
Carrie Murphy, who is almost as controversial as Dominic Cummings within her circles,
she's
has now
moving
moved
to Labour HQ. She's moving. I see this actually as a preparing for governance thing. I hope that in 2 weeks' time, Jeremy Corbyn will be the Prime Minister of an interim government with, people from the Independent Group, people from the Tories, people from the Lib Dems. Carrie Murphy's skills are amazing as a class fighter and as a trade unionist and as a former nurse. But she wouldn't be my number one choice to hold together a government of cross-party, soft Tories and Lib Dems.
This government of a cross-party, whatever
it's going to happen.
Unity,
get used to it, and you won't be in it.
It won't happen, and it's completely illogical and it's completely undemocratic.
Come back, all of you. Thank you very much indeed. We've run out. That's all from us this evening. I'll be back tomorrow night. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.